Ethan Cole had scarcely set foot on Orbital Research Station Epsilon-7 when a sense of both foreboding and wonder washed over him. The cylindrical hull of the station gleamed with a subdued silver sheen, an older, time-worn relic set adrift near the restless boundary where Earth's jurisdiction gave way to uncharted cosmic dominions. The corridor lights flickered softly, humming with subdued energy, as though echoing the subtle tension that existed among the station's inhabitants. He clutched a small duffel bag brimming with technical gear, took a tentative step forward, and allowed the humming door to slide shut behind him. Epsilon-7 was old, older than many of its sister stations that dotted the star-swept sphere of humanity's cosmic frontier. The station's purpose, in its heyday, had been cutting-edge, an advanced hub for research on alien technology. Over time, it bore witness to a swirl of controversies, breakthroughs, and whispered rumors that clung to the walls as if embedded in the bulkheads themselves. Despite the station's storied past, Ethan stepped into its corridors with an open mind. This was his new assignment as a systems engineer, and he intended to make the most of it. He navigated the labyrinthine passages, glancing at the uniform signage, laboratory wing, hydroponics, energy regulation rooms, and various locked sectors marked with cryptic alien symbols. Now and again, he saw only a fleeting shadow in the distance, some crew member, or perhaps an alien researcher. Indeed, Epsilon-7 was no longer manned by humans alone. At present, there was talk that an alien contingent had arrived several years ago under Earth's uneasy alliance with an interstellar coalition. Among these newcomers, he had heard whispers that the most mysterious, some would say formidable, individual was the station's new chief, Saria. Saria, it was rumored, commanded not only the research efforts but also possessed an uncanny ability. Her species, known in remote corners of the galaxy as the Yavarians, consumed energy in the most literal sense. They did not eat conventional food, nor did they take sustenance from typical means. Instead, they fed upon raw energy fields, absorbing that intangible force that hummed in the station's power lines and pulsed in unsuspecting organic forms alike. The rumor mill insisted Saria was mesmerizingly imposing, with tall, lithe limbs and eyes that flared a deep cobalt whenever she focused intently upon her next source of sustenance. But in truth, Ethan knew precious little. Gossip might be far removed from fact, and he had never set eyes upon a Yavarian in person. The sight of a 2-meter-tall being with elongated digits, swaying, filament-like hair, and glittering eyes might disconcert some, though Ethan considered himself open-minded. He had arrived early that morning with the singular intention of performing his duties, repairing and maintaining the station's aging systems. Yet in quiet moments, unbidden curiosity sprouted within him. What if the rumors were true? What if the alien chief was as impressive and as dangerous as some claimed? While lost in these contemplations, he found himself at the administrative lounge, a Spartan chamber lined with benches and an array of overhead displays. 2 human officers who were flipping through digital charts paused at his arrival. One was a squat, weary-eyed man in standard station uniform, the other a slender woman wearing the insignia of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. The man glanced up, appraised Ethan with the swift, practiced eye of a soldier used to new arrivals. "You must be Cole, the systems engineer," he said matter-of-factly. "Name's Lieutenant Groves. This is Officer Delgado. We're in charge of orientation, among other things." Ethan managed a polite nod. "That's right, sir. I'm here for the maintenance detail. My specialty is integrated circuit diagnostics, as well as power management for advanced alien tech. My record should be on file." Delgado gave him a slight nod in return. "Yes, I've seen your file. Glad you made it. We were worried your shuttle might be delayed. Epsilon-7 is finicky, if you know what I mean. Systems are fragile, and small oversights can lead to big hazards." Groves snorted softly. "We have the best specialists we can get, but some of these systems were developed long ago. Also, you should be aware we have a new head of station, Saria." At that mention, Delgado fixed Ethan with a grave look. "She's not only an exceptional scientist, but she's also bound by a very unusual physiology. You've heard, I presume, that her kind feeds on energy?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, just rumors. I don't quite know what to believe." Delgado gave an awkward half-smile. "Believe only what you see. Saria can be intense, but she's fair. Just make certain you don't do anything that might provoke her. She's very strict about station protocols. Delgado's gaze moved to the corridor in a silent signal that the conversation was finished. Anyway, you'll want to settle in first. Here's a pass to the living quarters. After that, you'll report to the main lab. Saria wants to meet you personally. At the mention of a personal meeting, Ethan felt a small jolt in his stomach. Perhaps it was excitement or a flicker of apprehension. Thank you, he said quietly, securing the pass. I appreciate the advice. Thus, he made his way to a cramped cabin in the living quarters, passing various compartments with old metal doors. The hum of the station's power grid was more pronounced here, like a low-pitched presence that underscored each breath he took. He opened the door to discover a modest bunk, a small desk, and a data console for logging daily updates. The walls were painted a pale shade of green that had likely faded over the decades. Though not luxurious, it was sufficient for an assignment that demanded full focus on station repairs. Soon after unpacking his meager belongings, tools, a few changes of clothing, and a cherished photo of his parents, he headed toward the main laboratory. The route involved a descent through 3 levels connected by narrow lifts, humming tubes that rattled a bit whenever they shifted from one deck to another. On the 3rd deck, the corridors widened, lined with glass observation panels revealing rows of complex devices that glowed with faint luminescence. Alien inscriptions glimmered on the walls, almost as if they had been etched in starlight. And at the far end of the corridor stood a sealed door labeled, Main Lab, Authorized Personnel Only. It slid open at his presence, revealing an expansive chamber. The center of the room was dominated by a large apparatus, a tangle of wires, conduits, and rotating rings emitting a subdued azure glow. Tall, stacked monitors displayed streams of data. Arrayed along the perimeter were steel tables strewn with half-assembled devices, each bearing strange, otherworldly designs. A group of engineers, both human and alien, crowded around them, exchanging hushed discussions in various tongues. And there, at the center, stood Saria. She was taller than any human in the room, her posture commanding yet strangely graceful. The filaments of her hair undulated softly, as if stirred by an unseen cosmic breeze. Her hands, with elongated fingers, hovered above a console. She wore a form-fitting suit made of some glossy, dark material that seemed to reflect the faint glow of the apparatus, accentuating her sleek form. When she turned to face him, her eyes glimmered with that rumored cobalt brilliance, though in them he saw not the cruelty some had warned him of, but rather an intense curiosity. Ethan Cole, she pronounced his name almost as if tasting the syllables for the first time. Her voice resonated in a low, fluid tone that somehow felt simultaneously familiar and alien. I have read your credentials. Your expertise in advanced circuit diagnostics is why we requested your transfer here. He cleared his throat, nodding politely. I'm honored to be of service, Commander. She regarded him for a moment, her gaze like a silent probe that sought to delve beneath surface pleasantries. Then she spoke again. Epsilon-7 requires a stable energy supply for the technology we study. Our research focuses on bridging gaps between Earth's technology and artifacts from regions well beyond your solar system. Yet the station's systems are temperamental. I trust you will help ensure we don't suffer sudden failures, yes? Ethan swallowed, feeling the weight of the unspoken warnings from Delgado and Groves. I'll do my utmost, Commander, he said. Let me know what you need. One corner of her mouth, if it could be called that, curved in what might be a small smile. Yet there was an intensity in her cobalt eyes, as though beneath that calm exterior a potent force waited to be unleashed. Your diligence is welcome. We have lost 3 systems engineers in the past year. None could handle the demands for very long. Ethan's stomach lurched. He forced a reply. I'll do my best not to disappoint you, Commander. She gave a slow blink, then turned her attention back to the console. You may begin by running a full diagnostic on that apparatus. She gestured toward the rotating rings. It channels subquantum pulses that my people developed millennia ago. The power fluctuations have recently grown unpredictable, and it could threaten our experiments. I must feed on stable energy flows, not chaotic surges. Her frankness about feeding made Ethan's heart skip a beat. He nodded and approached the apparatus, carefully setting his tool pack on a metal surface. As he tapped the console's control panels, the rings began to spin more rapidly, and faint arcs of light flickered from one ring to the next. Dimly aware of Saria observing him, he ran a thorough check on the system's electromagnetic fields, the damping regulators, and the flux calibrators. It soon became apparent that something was amiss. Minute fluctuations in the apparatus were intensifying over time, likely the result of sabotage or incomplete maintenance. The readouts were spiking in patterns that defied normal usage. He frowned, analyzing the data carefully. He had not expected to find such a serious irregularity on his first day, but it seemed Epsilon-7 was indeed a station of secrets, just as the rumors suggested. Saria, noticing his pensive expression, drifted closer. "What do you see?" He pointed at the readouts. "Commander, these fluctuations aren't random. They follow a pattern, like someone is deliberately adjusting certain field parameters behind the scenes. It could be sabotage, or at least unauthorized tampering. This isn't a simple breakdown." Her cobalt eyes narrowed with a dangerous gleam. "You are certain?" "Relatively so," he replied, maintaining calm. "I'll need to run deeper tests, but it appears that these changes were made recently, possibly in the last few weeks." There was a charged silence. Ethan felt, acutely, the presence of this powerful being at his side. He could almost sense the faint crackle of energy that emanated from her, as if she could draw it from the apparatus at will. He recalled the caution Delgado had offered. Saria was known to be strict, and if sabotage was discovered, the culprit would face severe consequences. Quietly, she said, "We have had tensions here. Some among the human crew fear the presence of my species. Others blame Earth's administration for conceding too much to the Yavarians. It is not inconceivable that someone would attempt sabotage. If they can disrupt my feeding or hamper our experiments, they might hope to drive me away." At that, Ethan felt a pang of empathy. "Commander, if you'll allow me, I'd like to investigate further. We might need to check system logs, see who accessed the apparatus's control panel in the last month." She gave a small nod. "Do so. I appreciate your candor and your competence. Remember, if I am deprived of stable energy, it compromises not only my own well-being, but also the safety of this station. My people designed much of this technology to interface with us directly. We cannot afford sabotage." Bowing his head, he returned to the console and initiated the necessary queries. As code scrolled across the screen, a strange spark ignited in him. He was no detective, but the puzzle intrigued him. As for Saria, even though her presence loomed large, there was something in her manner that fascinated him more than it frightened him. She was an alien, yet her voice conveyed a sense of resolve, a zeal not unlike that of a dedicated human commander. And thus began Ethan Cole's first day on Orbital Research Station Epsilon-7, a day that would mark the inception of a strange and potent bond, one that would redefine the boundaries between species, bridging the gulf between human flesh and alien hunger. That evening, after a marathon session of diagnostics and code inspection, Ethan found himself in the station's central mess hall, a small, windowless place where off-duty personnel gathered. The row of tables and chairs was mostly deserted, the overhead lights dimmed in an effort to conserve power, or perhaps to accommodate the nocturnal rhythms of non-human residents. He collected a tray of simple fare, nutrient paste, and a cup of synthetic coffee, and settled at an unoccupied table. He ate in silence, pondering the day's discoveries. The sabotage in the apparatus was subtle, but definitely purposeful. Traces of unauthorized access had shown up in the system logs, though the ID signature was scrambled, which suggested not a casual tinkerer, but someone with specialized knowledge. Who would risk so much by tampering with Epsilon-7's advanced technology? Was it an insidious plot to expel the alien presence, or something more complex? He mused on Saria's demeanor. She was imposing, but not cruel. When she stood at his side, he could feel the air become electric with her presence. Yet her words were measured, logical. Did she suspect him? Unlikely, since he had only just arrived. But she might suspect other humans, or possibly even other Yavarians. The possibilities swirled through his mind. Interrupting his thoughts, a low hiss signaled someone joining him at the table. Glancing up, Ethan saw a tall figure in a dark uniform, another Yavarian. This one's filaments were tinged with faint silver, and his eyes, while still an otherworldly cobalt, were somewhat milder in their brilliance than Saria's. The being lowered himself carefully onto the chair across from Ethan, inclining his elongated head in greeting. "You are the new systems engineer," he said in a quiet, resonant tone. "Ethan Cole, correct?" Ethan offered a cautious nod. "Yes, that's me. I am called Naira," the Yavarian continued, placing a long-fingered hand lightly on the table. "I collaborate with Commander Saria on Xenotech research. I have studied some of your Earth languages and can manage a few. English is interesting, though the grammar is perplexing." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Naira's frank manner. "Pleased to meet you. Is there something I can help you with?" Naira's gaze flicked to the overhead lights. "I wanted to greet you. We are an isolated group here, especially those of us who rely on Epsilon-7's energy fields for survival. Tensions run high, and new arrivals can shift the balance. You may not fully understand how vital your role is." Ethan frowned slightly. "I'm just here to keep systems running. But after what I saw today, I suspect there's more going on than routine maintenance." "That is an understatement," the alien replied. A faint sigh escaped him, as though speaking of the matter cost him energy. "Commander Saria bears the weight of countless tasks. She must oversee the research, ensure the station's operational integrity, and address the prejudice that some humans harbor toward us. On top of that, her body must feed on stable energy. It is a constant challenge." Ethan remembered the talk of sabotage. "You think the sabotage is directly aimed at Commander Saria's well-being?" Naira paused, eyes narrowing. "Certainly. But sabotage of the apparatus does more than disrupt her feeding. It jeopardizes the entire station's equilibrium. I suspect the saboteur wants more than just to weaken the commander. Perhaps they wish to discredit the entire Yavarian presence here. Earth's alliance with us is fragile. Some among your species believe it best to sever ties with ours." Ethan felt a pang of discomfort. Though he had grown up hearing about tensions between Earth and certain alien factions, he never imagined he would be on the front lines of such a dispute. "So what do we do? If we can't find the saboteur, the system might break down. Or worse." Naira nodded, rising from his seat with a smooth, fluid motion. "I believe Commander Saria trusts you. Your insight into these systems could prove decisive. Please, remain vigilant. If you notice anything unusual, gather evidence before drawing conclusions. There are those here who may try to manipulate you. Farewell for now." With that, the tall Yavarian drifted out of the mess hall, leaving Ethan to his thoughts. The hum of the station felt more oppressive than before. Ethan glanced down at his half-eaten meal, the nutrient paste suddenly unappetizing. He rose from his seat and disposed of his tray, heading back to his cabin with heavy steps. Sleep did not come easily. The artificial night cycle had dimmed the corridors, lending them an eerie quiet. Ethan lay on his bunk, replaying the day's events, his mind abuzz with speculation about sabotage, alliances, and the alien commander's intense presence. At times, the notion that Saria survived by siphoning energy made him uneasy. Yet he also felt a pull of curiosity, a desire to understand how such a being functioned. The entire scenario felt like a strange dream, something out of an old serialized sci-fi novel, except he was living it. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him, and he drifted into a restless slumber. Vivid images tumbled through his dreams, glowing rings spinning out of control, corridors set aflame by surging power lines, and Saria's cobalt eyes watching him from the shadows. When he woke, heart pounding, the station's morning cycle had already begun. A dull ache resonated in his shoulders, but he forced himself to his feet. Today, there would be no respite. The sabotage must be investigated, or the entire station might face catastrophe. Over the next several days, Ethan tirelessly combed through security logs, diagnostic reports, and archive data. He teamed up with a small group of technicians, both human and Yavarian, trying to reconstruct the steps that led to the tampering. With each passing hour, he gained deeper insight into how the station's power grid functioned, how the subquantum apparatus channeled specialized energy, and how that energy was partially diverted to meet Saria's unique requirement. The complexities were staggering. In rare moments when Saria appeared at his side, he felt a potent tension surge through him. She would inquire about his progress in clipped, direct phrases, her tall figure looming with regal poise. At times, he glimpsed the faint arcs of energy dancing around her fingertips, as though she were unconsciously drawing power from the environment. Her gaze never lingered too long, but he sensed that she was studying him, measuring how far she could trust him. Curiously, Ethan discovered something unexpected in the logs, an emergent pattern that suggested the sabotage went deeper than a mere single act of tampering. Over the past months, subtle alterations to system protocols had taken place. Some modifications were trivial, others more insidious. They all led to one conclusion. Someone had been systematically weakening the station from within. The sabotage to the apparatus was only the latest step in a longer game. He brought these findings to Saria in a private briefing. They met in her personal workspace, a smaller chamber adjacent to the main lab. Soft, pulsating lights framed the walls, giving the room a serene but otherworldly ambience. The hum of the station's power lines was subdued here, as if out of respect for the commander's presence. She listened intently as Ethan shared the collected data, her cobalt eyes narrowing at the potential implications. So, the sabotage started long before my arrival. Ethan concluded, his voice quiet yet firm. It's not random. The manipulations appear methodical, aiming to create a cascade failure eventually. Saria's elongated fingers traced the edges of a glowing data tablet. And if the station's systems collapse altogether, it would force a full evacuation. Her voice seemed distant. The Yavarian stationed here rely on a stable energy environment. A meltdown would be disastrous to us and to the Alliance itself. Ethan set his jaw. Could it be a group of conspirators? Perhaps they want Earth to relinquish the station. Saria tilted her head in consideration. Possibly. Or a lone operative with a personal vendetta. I cannot say for certain yet. But you have done well to uncover these patterns. It confirms that we must act quickly to secure the station. The sharp tone of her voice roused a swirl of emotions in Ethan. He took a breath. Commander, if we're going to root out the culprit, we need more than just remote logs. We need to set up a trap or at least monitor the key junctions physically. Your presence, might be the main target. Her gaze flicked up, and for a moment, Ethan felt a jolt, as though he had stepped too far. But then her expression softened, if only slightly. Your diligence is commendable. You speak truth. This goes beyond personal hunger. If we are to maintain this station, we must rid ourselves of the saboteur. You have my permission to do whatever you deem necessary to safeguard the apparatus and the power grid. Report to me directly with all findings. He let out a small sigh of relief. Thank you, Commander. I'll see to it immediately. In the days that followed, he hardly slept. Alongside a handful of trusted crew, Ethan installed new sensors near the main power conduits. He set up hidden loggers and subroutines of the station's master computer. He also recruited Naira and a small group of Yavarians who possessed keen energy senses, hoping they might detect abnormal fluxes or shifts whenever the saboteur attempted another intrusion. His cabin became a second command center, cluttered with data disks and half-finished mugs of coffee. Each day brought them closer to an answer, but the suspense was palpable, like the station itself was holding its breath. Late one night, as he was reviewing a fresh cluster of data, he felt a faint presence outside his door. The sensor beeped softly, indicating someone had approached. Rising, he opened the door to find none other than Saria standing there, a towering silhouette in the dim corridor. Her expression was unreadable, yet the cobalt glow in her eyes seemed subdued, almost pensive. Commander, he managed, stepping aside to let her enter. Is everything all right? She moved inside with a measured grace. Her gaze flicked over the clutter of datapads and glowing monitors. I could ask the same of you. You've scarcely slept in the past few rotations. He ran a hand through his hair. Just trying to crack this sabotage. We're close, but the intruder is cunning. They cover their tracks well. She nodded, silent for a moment. There was a certain tension in the air, as though something unspoken lingered. Ethan, she said at last, her voice lower than usual. I must speak plainly. My energy reserves are waning. The sabotage has compromised the station's subquantum field, making it increasingly difficult to draw stable energy. My hunger grows, and not just for the apparatus's output. His pulse quickened at her candid admission. Is there a way to compensate? Surely we can reroute some auxiliary power to your quarters. She exhaled, and a faint crackle of energy flickered around her fingertips. It is not that simple. My species feeds best when the energy resonates in harmony with our own biologic frequencies. The apparatus provided that. But the sabotage has introduced distortion into the system. If it goes on too long, I may succumb to a primal hunger. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He recalled the stories he had heard of Yavarians draining energy directly from living creatures when driven to desperation. "Commander, we'll fix it," he said earnestly. "We'll find the culprit, restore the apparatus." She raised a hand, her elongated fingers nearly brushing his shoulder. "Ethan, you are uniquely attuned to the system's frequencies. I sense it when you calibrate the apparatus. Your presence alone steadies the field. Already, I have felt a faint echo of energy in you that resonates with Yavarian frequencies. It is unusual in humans." He swallowed hard, trying to parse the implications of her words. "But I'm just running diagnostics. Maybe it's a side effect of the equipment or my familiarity with alien tech." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Possibly. Or there may be more to your natural predispositions. I came here tonight to ask if you would willingly offer me a portion of your energy. I would not force it upon you. But if you consent, I can form a controlled circuit, drawing only what I need to sustain myself until the apparatus is fully repaired." Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. The idea of letting an alien feed on his energy carried a primal fear. And yet, looking into her cobalt eyes, he found no malice there, only vulnerability and necessity. He took a shaky breath. "Commander, if it helps you, I'll do it. Just promise me it's safe." Her lips curved into a subdued smile. "I will be gentle. I vow it." She guided him to a chair, and he sat, uncertain. She then placed her palms lightly on his temples, her elongated fingers splaying across his hair. A subtle tingling coursed through him, as though a warm current of electricity danced along his nerves. Her cobalt eyes glowed more intensely, and he sensed a gentle pull, not painful, just surreal. The air thickened, and his surroundings blurred at the edges of his vision. Gradually, the tingle spread to his chest, his arms, and an unspoken connection formed between them, a circuit bridging human and Yavarian physiology. He felt a slight drain, like giving blood, but also a surge of something akin to euphoria. Saria inhaled softly, as if savoring a much-needed breath of oxygen after a near drowning. The entire exchange lasted no more than a minute, yet it felt both timeless and intimate. When she pulled back, Ethan took a moment to steady himself. He was left with mild fatigue, but he also felt an odd sense of clarity, as though some hidden dimension had opened between them. Saria's shoulders relaxed, her face showing the faintest hint of relief. "Thank you," she breathed. "This shall sustain me for a time. I regret imposing on you." He blinked, shaking off a lingering haze. "You're welcome. I think. It's strange, but I'm all right." She gave him a grateful nod, then turned to leave, only pausing at the door. "Your willingness to assist me will not be forgotten." And with that, she slipped out into the corridor, leaving Ethan alone with a whirlwind of thoughts and a newly discovered connection that defied everything he thought he knew about the boundaries of species. In the aftermath, Ethan found his concentration sharpening. His work on the sabotage progressed in leaps and bounds, as though that brief exchange with Saria had awakened an instinct. He noticed subtle correlations in the data logs, angles he had overlooked before. By the station's next morning cycle, he had compiled enough clues to strongly suspect that the saboteur was among the human staff who specialized in station maintenance, a cunning individual who accessed hidden compartments to tamper with code physically. Despite his resolve, he couldn't shake the feeling that his new bond with Saria carried an unspoken weight. A part of him wondered if it was purely physiological, a transaction of energy that had awakened dormant capacities within him. Or was it something else, a deeper link that transcended mere logic? He dismissed such musings as best he could, focusing instead on the looming danger that threatened them all. That day, he spoke with Lieutenant Groves, presenting his findings and requesting additional security around the main power conduits. The lieutenant furrowed his brow but ultimately agreed. Delgado, too, seemed concerned, though her expressions betrayed a hint of doubt. Maybe she suspected Ethan's closeness to Saria was coloring his judgment. If so, Ethan kept his silence. The less said about how Saria fed, the better. Still, no immediate culprit emerged. The saboteur operated deftly, avoiding the newly installed sensors and leaving only faint traces. The atmosphere around the station grew tense, each day overshadowed by the possibility of a catastrophic meltdown. Some of the human staff grumbled openly, complaining about the Avarians and the dangerous technology they brought. Others carried on their duties in stony silence. The Avarians, for their part, grew more reticent, spending longer hours in the designated alien quarters. Naera remained cordial toward Ethan, though even he seemed troubled, as if aware that the entire alliance hung by a thread. Then came the incident that changed everything. Late one cycle, an alarm blared through the corridors, echoing with urgent shrieks. Racing to the source, Ethan found the subquantum apparatus in a state of near overload. Arcs of crackling energy leaped wildly from the rotating rings, scorching the walls and scattering equipment. The lab's monitors flashed bright red warnings, containment breach imminent. Engineers scrambled in panic, some shouting, others ducking behind protective barriers. Over the din, Ethan glimpsed Saria at the heart of the chaos, her form illuminated by furious streams of electricity. Her eyes glowed, straining to absorb the raging energy, but it was too much for one being to handle. She staggered, nearly collapsing under the brutal torrent of raw power. Without hesitation, Ethan rushed forward, ignoring the searing heat that radiated from the swirling arcs. His hands flew across a scorched console, inputting emergency shutoff commands. The system refused to respond. Someone had locked it down with an override code. The sabotage was manifesting in full force, aimed at unleashing a meltdown that would destroy them all. Saria caught sight of him and cried out, "Stay back. The field is unstable." He set his jaw. "We have no choice. I have to stop it from here." Her elongated fingers clenched as she desperately attempted to siphon off enough power to stabilize the ring. "Hurry." With frantic keystrokes, Ethan attempted to bypass the override. Sparks showered him, burning small holes in his uniform, but he pressed on. In that moment of crisis, he felt a surge of foreign strength, an echo of the bond he shared with Saria. He sensed the machine's rhythms like a second heartbeat, spiking wildly. Summoning a clarity he scarcely understood, he typed in a manual reroute sequence, forcing the runaway energy into backup capacitors. The apparatus whirled, howling as if in protest. For a split second, Ethan feared it was too late. Then, with a violent jolt, the spinning ring slowed, and the arcs of lightning ebbed. Alarms still blared, but the meltdown was averted. Saria sank to one knee, her hair filaments twitching erratically. The sudden drop in raw energy left her trembling. Ethan rushed to her side, kneeling down, ignoring the acrid smoke that burned his nostrils. "Commander!" "Stay with me," he gasped, pressing a hand to her shoulder. "Are you all right?" She looked up, her cobalt eyes flickering. I am weakened." Despite her obvious strain, she managed a faint smile. "But alive. You did it." Before Ethan could reply, Lieutenant Groves and several security officers burst into the lab, weapons drawn. The scene before them was chaotic: burnt console panels, charred floors, scattered tools. Then, stepping out from behind one of the support structures, brandishing a small handheld device, was a wiry man Ethan recognized as a technician named Kincaid. The device looked suspiciously like a remote hacking module. His expression was twisted with a mix of rage and triumph. "You meddled fools," Kincaid spat, eyes wild. "Don't you see? These aliens threaten everything we stand for. They mean to subvert Earth, enslave us with their energy demands." Ethan scrambled to his feet, fury and relief clashing within him. "Kincaid, drop that device. You nearly destroyed the station." Kincaid sneered, waving the device threateningly. "You're a traitor, Cole. You're letting that creature feed on us, manipulate our technology. I won't let Earth fall to them." He pressed a button on the device, and overhead lights began to flicker ominously. A new alarm wailed. Groves barked an order for Kincaid to surrender, but the deranged technician sprinted along the walkway, trying to reach another control panel that presumably housed a final sabotage command. Security officers rushed after him. A quick scuffle ensued. A bright flash lit the chamber as the device short-circuited in Kincaid's hand. Sparks flew, and he let out a cry of pain. The officers subdued him, forcing him to the ground. The immediate threat was neutralized. Ethan slid down beside Saria again, exhaling a shaky breath. The meltdown was stopped, Kincaid apprehended, but the damage was severe. Half the apparatus was fried, and Saria's energy reserves seemed dangerously low. As medical personnel and emergency teams flooded in, Ethan felt his vision blur. Exhaustion, combined with the emotional toll, nearly overwhelmed him. Through the haze, he heard Saria's voice, quiet yet resolute. "Our station stands. This alliance stands. We will survive." In the aftermath of the crisis, Epsilon-7 descended into a whirlwind of repairs and intense scrutiny. Technicians labored day and night to mend the scorched conduits and replace the fried modules of the subquantum apparatus. Security personnel interrogated Kincaid, gleaning the details of his extremist ideology. He believed humans should cast out all alien influence, fearing subjugation or worse. His sabotage had been meticulously planned, with the ultimate goal of forcing a catastrophic event that would lay blame squarely on the Avarians. Commander Saria spent several cycles in recovery, confined to a specialized chamber where she could draw small surges of stabilized energy. Ethan visited often, driven by both concern and a curious sense of responsibility. He felt a guilt, as though by being the person who had uncovered the sabotage, he had somehow fueled Kincaid's wrath. Yet each time he stepped into the chamber, Saria offered him a measured nod of gratitude, her cobalt eyes reflecting neither blame nor anger, only a weary appreciation. She looked pale in the subdued lights, her posture listless. Her once restless hair filaments drifted with diminished vigor. The station's efforts to restore stable energy flows were paramount, and the repair teams were making headway, but not quickly enough for her to fully recover. On the third day of her convalescence, Ethan found her stoically struggling to steady her breath as arcs of faint blue electricity danced around her hands, a sign that she was attempting to feed. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he murmured, stepping to her side. "The apparatus still isn't at full capacity." She inhaled shakily, beads of sweat dotting her temples. "I have to regain my strength. The station depends on it. I can't remain idle while my people and your people labor for survival." He hesitated, recalling the bond they had forged in that moment of dire need. "Commander," he ventured quietly, "I'm willing to help again, like before, if it comes to that." Her eyes flickered with faint surprise, then a ghost of a smile. "You understand the risks?" "I do," he affirmed, softly, recalling the strange mixture of fatigue and euphoria he had felt the last time. "You said it yourself. We're both part of this station's fate. If sharing some of my energy helps you recover faster, I'm prepared." She closed her eyes, steadied herself, then nodded. "I will accept, but I promise to be cautious." Once again, she placed her elongated fingers at his temples, the contact sending a ripple of energy through his skull. Ethan inhaled sharply as a mild rush surged across his chest. With the apparatus still partially online, he could sense a hum in the background, an undercurrent that resonated with Saria's own flow. This time, the exchange felt more controlled, more deliberate. He felt a pleasant warmth spreading through his body, as though some intangible cord connected them, pulsing in time with twin heartbeats. When she withdrew, the lines of strain on her face had eased. Her eyes glimmered with renewed vitality. "Thank you," she whispered, bowing her head. "This bond is unlike anything I have known with a human." He exhaled, dizzy but functional. "Same here," he replied with a half-smile. "Let's just keep it between us. The rest of the crew might not understand." "Agreed," she murmured. "Now go. You must rest too." As the days passed, the station slowly returned to a semblance of order. A formal inquiry into the sabotage began, with Kincaid as its central figure. In a brief hearing, Delgado and Groves presented evidence of the sabotage's extent, from hacked subroutines to booby-trapped conduits. The cunning behind it was staggering. Kincaid, for his part, sat impassively, occasionally muttering about alien parasites. The leadership of Epsilon-7 resolved to transfer him to Earth for trial under interplanetary law. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself at the forefront of a new wave of collaborative repairs. With Saria's partial recovery, she oversaw the final reactivation of the subquantum apparatus, ensuring that it provided a stable energy frequency for both scientific research and her species' dietary needs. The rest of the Avarians quietly lent their expertise, moving about the station with a renewed sense of purpose. The sabotage had threatened them all, but it had also forged an unexpected solidarity among those who remained. In many ways, Ethan was the unifying point. His tireless work ethic and willingness to bridge the gap between human and Yavarian sparked a genuine shift in attitude. Humans who once eyed the Yavarians warily now saw them as partners in survival, reliant on the same precarious airlocks and power grids. And while Saria still commanded a certain awe, the glimpse of vulnerability she had shown, when Ethan helped feed her, echoed through rumors, making her appear less a distant, frightening overlord and more a capable leader worthy of respect. Whenever Ethan encountered her in the corridors, she inclined her head in greeting. They rarely spoke of their shared energy exchange in public, keeping the bond a private matter. Yet, each time their gazes met, a silent acknowledgement passed between them, a subtle thrill that defied easy explanation. A sense of connection, borderline necessity, had woven itself into their interactions, bridging the gulf between species in a profoundly personal way. Eventually, the day came for a triumphant test of the fully repaired apparatus. Engineers clustered in the main lab, a hush of anticipation settling over the group. Saria stood at the forefront, posture tall, her dark uniform gleaming under the overhead lights. Ethan, Delgado, Groves, Naira, and half a dozen others watched from nearby consoles. Outside the transparent walls, the swirling depths of space provided a stunning backdrop. With a solemn nod, Saria activated the console. The rings of the subquantum apparatus spun up, humming in a rhythmic crescendo. Monitors displayed stable energy flow charts, each line neat and green. No flicker of sabotage, no stray surge. The process reached a peak, and an inner sphere of shimmering blue coalesced at the center of the apparatus. A gentle crackle of electricity radiated outward, illuminating Saria's face with an otherworldly glow. "It's stable," Ethan observed, eyes darting over the data. All readings nominal. Saria's posture relaxed, a radiant satisfaction playing across her features. She placed one hand lightly on the apparatus console and, in a graceful motion, drew in a measured stream of energy. Her eyes closed, and Ethan noted how seamlessly she absorbed the power now. No flicker of distress, no sign of sabotage-induced disruption. When she opened her eyes again, they gleamed with renewed strength. A spontaneous ripple of applause broke out among the assembled engineers. Even Groves clapped with a rare grin. Earthling and Yavarian alike felt the weight of tension dissolve into relief. The meltdown was averted, the saboteur caught, and the apparatus restored. Epsilon-7 stood once more on stable footing, no longer teetering on the brink. Saria turned toward Ethan, giving him a measured bow of respect, and he responded with a nod. They said nothing, but the moment shimmered with mutual acknowledgement. They had faced chaos together, and out of that crucible, they had forged an unbreakable understanding. In the ensuing weeks, life on the station found a new equilibrium. With sabotage no longer looming, the daily hum of research resumed. Saria restructured the security protocols, introducing joint Earth-Yavarian oversight. Delgado and Groves found themselves juggling not only standard administrative duties, but also more open interactions with the alien staff, forging a climate of relative harmony. Ethan's role as systems engineer blossomed. He was called upon to act as a liaison, bridging the technical knowledge between human and Yavarian specialties. Though the tasks were demanding, he relished the chance to learn alien methodologies from Saria and Naira, gleaning insights that might one day shape Earth's own technological frontiers. A sense of renewed purpose coursed through him, replacing the initial apprehension that had dogged his first arrival. And then there was Saria herself. Freed from the fear of sabotage, she no longer had to hoard her energy reserves. She walked the corridors with a confident air, greeting both humans and Yavarians with the calm assurance of a leader at peace. The fractious rumors that once swirled around her name melted away, replaced by whispered admiration or open curiosity. Late one cycle, as Ethan finished a system check in the newly fortified control center, he received a discreet comm message asking him to report to Saria's personal chamber. A mild flutter of nerves rippled through him. Though they had shared an extraordinary bond out of necessity, they had scarcely spoken of it since the day of the meltdown. Now, with the station fully stabilized, what might she wish to discuss? He made his way through the gently curving corridors, arriving at a small airlock door leading into Saria's private domain. The door slid open, revealing an ambient glow of azure light. Inside, Saria stood by a console, scanning data readings that floated in midair. When Ethan entered, she deactivated the display with a wave of her hand, turning to regard him with an unreadable expression. "You requested me, Commander," he said, half formal, half curious. She gestured for him to come closer. "Yes, Ethan. There is a matter I wish to address, one not strictly related to station protocols." A knot formed in his stomach. I'm listening. Her cobalt eyes softened, her voice low. Our bond. It arose out of necessity, but it cannot be undone so simply. I have fed from your energy more than once. In my species, such sharing forges ties that linger, ties that might influence emotions, even thoughts. She paused, as if searching for the right words. I do not wish to impose upon you. I merely desire your understanding that you are special to me. A subtle warmth spread through Ethan's chest. Saria, I don't regret helping you. If anything, I feel closer to you and to your people than I ever imagined I would. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I'm willing to find out. She nodded gravely. It can mean whatever we decide. You have your life, your duties, and so do I. But if we choose to explore this connection, it may grow. Our two species rarely experience such intimacy. It could be remarkable. He searched her gaze, seeing neither threat nor manipulation, only honest vulnerability and the possibility of an uncharted path. Then let it be remarkable, he said softly, stepping nearer. I don't know all the answers, but I'm not afraid to see where this leads. She accepted his words with a gentle incline of her head. Slowly, she lifted a hand, fingers splayed. He mirrored her motion, and for a moment, their fingertips touched, bridging the gap between human and Yaverian in a quiet yet powerful gesture. A whisper of electricity passed between them, and Ethan felt that familiar, thrilling warmth. Then they stood in companionable silence. The station hummed around them, an ambient testament to the alliance they had fought to save. In that hush, it was impossible not to reflect on how far they had come, how sabotage, fear, and near catastrophe had yielded something unforeseen and beautiful. Over the next few cycles, rumors circulated throughout Epsilon-7, rumors of a budding unity, of new breakthroughs in Xenotech, of a station that, once overshadowed by suspicion and dread, now stood as a beacon of cooperation. Word spread of Commander Saria's formidable leadership tempered by compassion, and of a systems engineer named Ethan Cole who seemed uncannily in sync with alien technology. Kincaid was sent away to face justice, and the station's population breathed easier, their vigilance sharpened by hard-won lessons. The subquantum apparatus thrived under careful supervision, fueling not only the station's experiments, but also sustaining Saria and her fellow Yaverians in a steady flow of harmonious energy. For Ethan and Saria, their connection blossomed quietly. They continued their professional routines, overseeing repairs, analyzing data, conferring with Earth's command, but in private moments, they shared deeper reflections. Sometimes, when the station's artificial night cycle enveloped them in a hush, they would meet in the softly lit alcoves near the main lab. She might offer him a few words of her people's ancient lore, and he would show her the human traditions of music or poetry. In these small exchanges, the foundations of trust and tenderness grew, transcending the boundaries that once loomed so large. As time wore on, it became clear that Epsilon-7 had undergone a profound transformation. Suspicion and sabotage gave way to solidarity and discovery. The quiet alliance between humans and Yaverians took root, nurtured by the unwavering dedication of individuals like Ethan and Saria, who proved that true understanding often emerges from adversity. And so, when Ethan stood at one of the station's observation windows late one evening, gazing upon the infinite canvas of stars, he allowed himself a rare smile. He remembered the anxious young engineer who had arrived with little more than a duffel bag and an open mind. Now, he was part of something greater, a living testament that even across the chasm of species, hearts could meet, feeding each other in ways beyond mere survival. Soon, Saria joined him at the window, the faint glow of cosmic light dancing across her features. She said nothing, merely slipped her elongated hand into his. He squeezed gently, feeling the subtle charge that signaled their bond. In that moment, the silent majesty of the stars and the quiet hum of Epsilon-7 converged, embracing them both in a promise of endless possibility. A sense of peace settled over them, a deep contentment forged from danger overcome, from sabotage thwarted, and from the profound realization that they had found something worth protecting, worth nurturing, and worth celebrating. In the hush of the star-filled night, their story had not ended. It had, in many ways, just begun. But even if new challenges would surely arise, they faced them with hope, united in a connection that proved, beyond doubt, that hunger did not always divide. It could also be satisfied in the most unexpected and wondrous of ways.